And welcome back to Locked On Rams and Locked On Vikings. So here in our third segment, talk more about these matchups, talk more about this game. I think for me, if you're a Rams fan, kind of one thing you've been screaming at your TV the entire season is you want to run the football, you want to establish the run. And kind of one thing I want to hit too is just the Rams' ability to run the football against this Vikings defense that has a lot of 100 rushing yards in 5 of their last 6 games. You look at where Kyron Williams is. He looks like he could be due for a big game against the Vikings. 5 of their last 6 opponents have rushed for 100 yards, with 3 of those, Cardinals, Falcons, and Lions, at least 150. Since week 13, the Vikings ranked 17th in rush EPA after they were first for weeks 1 through 12. So how do you make sense of kind of the Vikings run defense at this stage of the season? What's really changed since the first part of the year?
So losing Ivan Pace was a lot of that. They lost Ivan Pace. I think it was week 12 when they lost Ivan Pace, and then they had Kama Grugier-Hill and Josh Metellus and stuff. Having all those guys, they're healthy with the linebackers. It makes such a difference. You can see in the Packers game that the which is one of the best rush teams in the league, and Josh Jacobs was, I would say, contained. I think he ended up with like 60 some yards. It was fine. That mattered a lot, and that was when Ivan Pace came back. So that probably explains. I think that explains a lot of those. Not having those 2 linebackers for a lot of the season has hurt them, but they have them now. Cashman and Pace are both healthy and both slated to start. And then obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs getting 4 touchdowns on him is pretty frustrating. But the Lions ran on him the first time too, and I think you can, it's the Lions. They got out physicaled, and they don't usually get out physicaled out front that way. I would say Harrison Phillips has been declining all year long. I think he might be getting a little long in the tooth, and they've gotten a little less out of explosiveness out of somebody like Jonathan Bullard as the season has kind of worn on. But on the flip side, they've sort of had a low-key break. I don't even want to say breakout because he's a rotational player, but they've gotten flashes, maybe I'll say, from Jalen Redmond, who we didn't even think was going to make the team. And was sort of a depth guy. He's replacing Taki Taimani, who had that rotational role, but he's on IR now. So that sort of front 7 has given you a lot, but it kind of depends on what the Rams want to do with Kyron Williams. If you want to run up the middle, I think you'll have more success than running to the edges, because Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard, in terms of setting those edges, are absolutely and utterly insane. A lot of this is Kyron Williams is going to have to read that, find an edge that doesn't look the way he likes, cut back, find the right gap, and all that stuff, sort it all out, be patient at the right time, be decisive and fast and bursty at the right time. And some running backs can't do that. But if you want to talk about what's kind of sunk them from the best rush defense in the league, which they were for the first half of the season, to like a little bit more average, yeah, getting a little bit less at a couple of those guys up front. But I think the main culprit is losing Ivan Pace for a lot of that, and they do have him back.
Yeah, and that's really going to be a big key to their success. And of course, from the Rams standpoint, it's Justin Jefferson. I mean, I think you kind of start right there and try to limit these big plays, those big explosive plays, because that's an area where the Vikings can have an advantage. Jefferson, at least 20 yards on 27.2% of his catches this year. It's the 7th best in the National Football League. And the Rams, that's a problem area. They've allowed the 5th highest rate of 20-yard receptions to their opponents this season. And that's something that's always going to be a cause for concern, because Justin Jefferson is someone that it's not about stopping him. It's just trying to limit the damage as much as humanly possible. And it's not like the Rams are going to throw out their elite boundary corners or anything like that. The safety play has definitely been a strong suit for them, trying to get big and physical as you possibly can and just try to keep things in front of you. I mean, this Chris Shula defense has worked, and the reason it has worked is the defensive line getting pressure. Jared Verse, a rookie out of Florida State, he's already established himself as one of the best edge rushers, not even just as a rookie. And I think really for this Rams team, they're not a team that gets a ton of turnovers like the Vikings do, but neutralizing Justin Jefferson is going to be by committee and not by one individual.
So it sounds like we're zoning off or bracketing. That's going to be the plan. So when that happens, when other teams have done that all year long, their quarters and cover 2 and stuff, that kind of has meant Jordan Addison gets 150 yards, TJ Hawkinson gets 100 yards. Like that's like those other guys pop off. And the best way to defend Justin Jefferson that I've seen other teams employ is to get really physical with him in man coverage, and eat your flags sometimes. and just kind of mug him and beat him up. And it works against Jordan Addison too. He's a smaller receiver. So teams have been really physical on the Vikings and kind of have taken their flags in stride, and it's led the Vikings to be like way out in front, lead the league in like penalty yardage because you get DPIs that obviously skews that. But it's kind of just the way that teams want to defend the Vikings, and everybody says, yeah, we'll take a couple of DPIs and hopefully that sort of stymies these guys. But it sounds like you're not thinking about doing that. You're thinking more about playing spatially. And I'm telling you, if it becomes down to a chess match of who can better navigate spatially a field with Justin Jefferson on it and the gravity that he has, I've seen teams do that a lot this year, and those are the games where Sam Darnold throws for 350 yards.
And that's the challenge, and that really is a scenario where it's kind of a personnel thing from the Rams standpoint. Is you really can't take that bait if you're them and defend him like that. And we saw kind of in the first matchup too. It's like you need to know that you're going to produce on your offensive side of the football as well. And I think, look, if you're Sam Darnold, if you're Justin Jefferson, I mean, you mentioned Jordan Addison, another USC guy. I mean, DJ Hawkinson back. I mean, they have weapons, and I don't think that you're going to completely stop and neutralize this Vikings offense with their right. And look, you got Cam Akers, former Ram there. You got Aaron Jones, former Ram there. But I think that what has worked for this Rams team all season long is playing their style and not tailoring it to one player particularly, and just hoping that the bend but don't break style is effective enough to allow the offense to really put up points. I mean, what's really interesting too about this matchup is just a lot of just polar opposites with these groups. I mean, look at the Rams. First quarter, one of the worst in the NFL, 1.8 points per game. It's 31st. The Vikings, on the other hand, is second best, 6.4 points per first quarter. So getting out to a really strong start. I mean, you saw in the first matchup, the Vikings outscored the Rams 14-7 in the first quarter. They scored 2 touchdowns in their first two drives. So I think
they went touchdown. So
I think that you are a Vikings team. You're going to look to get explosive early, and a lot of that is taking advantage of those playmakers you do have.
Yeah, and while we have time, I want to flip to the other side too, because the Vikings' whole philosophy is aggression. This is just a team that is built on aggression. They're built on aggressively pushing the ball downfield on offense, shot plays all the time, but defensively, it's Brian Flores, right? It's blitzing and all that. So with the way that Stafford has been playing, like his response to the blitzes last time was to get the ball out quickly, and they did a good job of pushing the ball downfield and not contracting. Is that still the way that Matt Stafford does this? And do we trust this offense right now to get the ball out quickly, not just to check downs in the flat to Kyron Williams? The Vikings know how to do that, but to get the ball out to Puka Nacua on a basic and execute that tightly and quickly enough to really beat these blitzes, but not have to change your offensive philosophy over it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the game plan is going to be similar in a lot of different ways. I mean, you've seen them have success with screen passes. You've seen them have success with jet sweeps. I think one thing that Rams fans are going to be looking at early is if Cooper Kupp isn't getting separation, if he's just out there being a run blocker and maybe a guy that occasionally moves the chains and the Rams need points, and let's say the Vikings get off to a good start like we saw, do you insert Jordan Whittington, who had a really nice game in the season finale, who has played well in his opportunities? Do you throw him into the mix as another weapon if the emphasis
is he a receiver? Jordan Whittington?
Yeah, Jordan Whittington, receiver out of Texas. Okay. Yeah, he's someone that's like he can impact the game as a kick returner. He's big physical receiver, strong hands, and kind of fits the mold of a Rams receiver. But I do think that is going to be the game plan. And like you mentioned, the blitz heavy style of the Vikings, the ability to get turnovers. I think with Matthew Stafford, there comes a point when it gets a little gunslinger if you fall behind early in games. You want to get it all back in a hurry and push the ball downfield. But when we've seen this offense click at their best with this version of Matthew Stafford, it's when there is a balance with the run game, with this offensive line that is more of a road grade style gap duo with the reemphasis on just being big and physical with Kyron Williams as your running back, and just kind of mixing things up with Tyler Higbee being back, another little safety valve for Matthew Stafford. And I think, too, you just can't turn the ball over. I mean, we mentioned these polar opposites between these two teams, the first quarter scoring, turnovers as well. I mean, the Vikings, 33 turnovers this season. That leads the NFL. The Vikings have 24 interceptions, 5 more than any other team. The Rams have 23 interceptions in the last 2 years combined. So not turning the ball over, playing clean on offense is going to go very far to determine if the Rams ultimately win this game at home. And you have to play the style that has led to being the surprise NFC West champions, and that's by not doing too much. And we've seen that have success this season.
Yeah. I mean, turnovers, it always comes down to turnovers, right? And for the Vikings, they have sort of cleaned up their giveaways issue over the last couple of months. Sam Darnold hasn't thrown too many interceptions. I think he's got 2 or 3 since like week 12 or something like that. One of them came on a 4th down that he was just throwing it up, and it was actually better than taking a sack because it was 4th. But so he's been playing a lot cleaner brand of football. They've had a little fumbleitis sometimes here and there, but I think things have like normalized in terms of their giveaways, but they're still generating a lot of takeaways. And the reason they generate takeaways is because they put a lot of pressure on you. They confuse the picture. They muddy it. A lot of their takeaways look like the one Matt Stafford threw to Byron Murphy in the last game, where it was kind of a late down. He was just throwing one up, big overthrow, and it falls in the bucket. They just track the rainbow, and you got to not do that. And maybe that means eating your sack and playing more conservatively or something like that. But yeah, it is a difference in styles. It sounds like the Rams are a lot more about conservative, sound, execute, do your thing, and be efficient. Whereas the Vikings are all about hunting that one explosive and famine feast.
No doubt about it. Yeah. And another point about that efficiency is getting it done early in series. Another polar opposite, This Rams team converted 36.8% of the third downs this season. That's the 4th lowest in the National Football League. And you look at where the Vikings are at, they're at 35.6% and stopping teams on third down. So that's the 4th lowest in the NFL. So they've done really good in that department, actually first in stopping teams on 4th down. So if you're the Rams team, the last thing you want to do is put yourself in 3rd and long situations, forcing them to obvious passing downs. And then you get aggressive, turnovers can happen. So that's
where the bad stuff happens. Yep.
That's where the bad stuff happens. And I think that is kind of the matchup. That what makes this matchup a very fascinating one is it almost feels like the Rams are a little more conservative in their style and what they're really trying to do on both sides of the football, but they know that is what works when everything is well executed, where the Vikings, there's a little more of high variance heading into this matchup. But it's definitely
that's the way it should be, right? I mean, you should take who you are and what your team is and what your team has been successful being, take that into the playoffs and see where the chips fall. And I think both these teams are going to do that. Yeah, and we'll see what happens.
Exactly. I think it's honestly, look, it's Monday night for a reason, right? We know that the eyeballs are going to be on SoFi Stadium, and I think that the Vikings have had a pretty surprising season. I mean, 14 wins with Sam Darnold, right? And then no one expected the Rams to win the NFC West. It was supposed to be the 49ers.
Especially when they were 1-4, yeah.
Seahawks. So, look, I think the Rams are kind of playing with a little bit of house money, right? But then the Vikings, I think that the most intriguing thing storyline-wise is the whole looming thing with J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold and the future of that organization and how important a playoff win would mean for both these franchises. Look, I mean, the truth of the matter is on the Rams side is if they get blown out or they lose this game and Matthew Stafford at this stage of his career, the way his contract is structured, they have an out as well. But it's going to be a very impactful game, meaningful game. I know that you don't want to throw out your prediction. I think I'm going to keep mine as well. Think about, especially because it's a Monday Night Football game. We have plenty of time to kind of dangle that carrot and think about that one for a little bit.